World History 2, Chapter 23, Segment 3, War and Execution. So, after Louis XVI and the royal family are brought back to Paris after they try and flee to the Netherlands, Austria and Prussia fear that more revolts will happen in their own countries, and in order to prevent that from happening, they decide to restore Louis to the throne to make everything go back to normal. Also, you have to remember, Marie Antoinette is from Austria. That's where she's from. So the French royal family is related to the Austrian royal family. So they're going to try and help out as best as they can. So they decide to try to reinstate Louis as absolute monarch. The new French government decides to declare war on Austria and Prussia in 1792. The Prussians at this time are a small state in what is present-day Germany. However, they have one of the greatest militaries of the time period, and they begin to march on Paris. As the army is moving through northern France, they warn the peasants not to harm the royal family. However, the peasants don't take well to their demands. On August 10, 1792, as the Prussian army is moving towards the capital, 20,000 peasants march on Tuileries and kill the royal guards and place the royal family under arrest. September massacres. In the following month, that same mob goes through the prisons in Paris, and anyone who's a royalist, meaning anyone who supports the king, was killed. So these people are already in prison, they're already in chains, can't defend themselves, and the mob comes in and kills all of them, so that when the Prussian army gets there, they won't have these people to help them. At this point, the king is deposed. What that means is he is no longer king. A new legislature is formed in France. No more limited monarchy. There is no more king. Okay? Now Louis XVI is just plain Louis. This new legislature is known as the National Convention. Monarchy is gone forever. It's not coming back. All adult males are allowed to vote. At this point, a group of people known as the Jacobins are in control of the French government. Jean-Paul Marat and Georges Danton began working together. Georges Danton's a politician. Jean-Paul Marat is a newspaper publisher. Danton begins giving speeches at the convention. Marat begins publishing things in his newspaper that call for death to anyone that supports the king. If you're against the revolution in any way, shape, or form, you need to be disposed of. Louis is tried for treason and sentenced to death by guillotine. Now, the guillotine, we'll see pictures of here in a minute, but was originally used as a way to mass kill sheep and other livestock animals in a humane way. It doesn't sound humane as I describe it, but back then the alternatives weren't much better. So you would march the animal up, lock a wooden beam on the back of its neck, hoist up a very heavy blade, similar to what a razor would look like, drop the blade, and it chops off the animal's head. This was used in the French Revolution not as a barbaric way to kill people, because before this you would have your head chopped off by an axe or a sword, and an executioner, a human, which through human error means you might not strike the neck perfectly, you might miss, you might take several swings to kill someone. A very brutal way to die, a very blood-curdling way to die, very violent. By using the guillotine, you could A, kill that person in one chop, and B, you could kill many people very quickly. So it was a humane, efficient way to take care of anyone tried by treason. Once this happened, the war between France, Austria, and Prussia continues on. Alright, we're going to see a couple different photos, or I'm sorry, paintings of the same thing. what I want you to think of here, in this painting, how does the author represent Louis XVI? That's him here. Okay. How does he represent them? Make sure you cite specific qualities, things from the painting that lets us know how the author feels about Louis. Okay? And why does he depict Louis this way? Why not depict him as fat, haggard, crying, so on and so forth? So, first, how does the author portray Louis? And then, why? Okay, remember, cite things specifically from the painting itself. And once again, this is what the guillotine would look like. Louis will be strapped onto this beam here, his head up here, then it will swivel down, his head will then go into this hole, that beam will be placed over his neck, and then the blade will then come down and chop off his head. Alright, here we have the same scene. Louis is once again being beheaded. Now, once again, this is a painting. Based on the painting itself, how does the author feel about Louis XVI being beheaded? How do you know that? So, look at this painting, look at details in the painting, and what does the author think about Louis being beheaded? And then how do you know that? Answer those two questions in your notes. Next, the Battle of Valmy. The French win the Battle of Valmy. However, after winning the battle, Great Britain, Holland, and Spain decide to help join the Austrians and Prussians against France. Now, these countries believe that, same as Austria and Prussia, that France and the revolution need to be stopped so that no other revolutions will threaten their own monarchy. As you can imagine, when you have all these new allies, new teammates joining in, France is going to suffer heavy defeats. In response, the National Convention, which is the governing body of France, will draft 300,000 citizens between the ages of 18 and 40, and women will also be included in the military. This will bring their army to a total strength of 800,000. Seems like a lot of people, especially for the time period. Problem: all of these people are ordinary citizens. They have no training, no discipline in the armed forces. So although they had a large army, many of them were not accustomed to warfare, discipline, marching, or military tactics. So you're putting up a very undisciplined, untrained, lackluster army against the premier fighting forces of all of Europe at this time. They're not going to have good effects for France. Here we see a painting of the Battle of Valmy. On this side, you see the French troops moving into position. You see some have already been injured. And here you see the Allied forces against the French. Terror grips France. So as we said, the Jacobins are in control of the National Convention. They have enemies. The peasants don't like them. Why? The Jacobins are responsible for changing the church. And the peasants are okay with all the reforms against the monarchy and everything else. However, they like the church. They like where it's at. They don't like the fact that the government has control over the church. The clergy are also their enemies, for obvious reasons. The church now is the state now is control of the church, not the clergy. So these people have lost power, so they do not like the Jacobins. Maximilien Robespierre will gain power of the Jacobins and, in essence, of the National Convention. This happens in 1793. He is a radical, and he wants to wipe out any trace of old France. The church itself. He is against Catholicism. He doesn't believe in religion. He believes in the Enlightenment ideas. He wants to completely wipe it out. Monarchy, gone, does not like that either. So much so that he will make a new calendar with no religious holidays starting with day 1, year 1, as the start of the revolution. He will close churches in Paris and not allow people to attend Mass. He will also make the Committee of Public Safety, where he will be the head of this committee, basically giving him powers of a dictator. Whatever he says will happen. Here we see a painting of Robespierre. He is dressed in your typical bourgeoisie or working class garments. He was a lawyer before becoming a politician, so stylish clothes more so than the peasants, but not stylish like the wealthy nobility, royal family, things like that. So that middle class in between those two. In the Reign of Terror, to protect the revolution from its enemies, Robespierre would kill anyone that he suspected of being against the revolution. Things happened so quickly that you could be tried in the morning for treason, sentenced to death, and by the afternoon you'd be guillotined and killed. The due process of law that we know and love in America today did not happen in France. Robespierre used his position to kill any rival leaders. Anyone that he thought could be a contender against him was wiped out. He would speak in the convention, tell them that this person was a traitor, loved the king, wanted to overthrow the government, whatever the case may be, sold secrets to the enemy, and then that person would be tried for treason and killed almost immediately. Georges Danton, who was one of the leaders of the revolution when it started, was put on trial by Robespierre and sentenced to death. And his quote was saying, "Show my head to the people, it's well worth seeing." So even people who are one of the first people to start revolutions are now being gotten rid of. Anyone who challenges Robespierre's power is immediately wiped out. The end of the terror. On July 28, 1794, people in the National Directory, in the Directory of Public Safety, are fearful that Robespierre will get rid of them. Robespierre went to the National Convention and said, "I have a list of traitors against the revolution," and then walked out. Never said who they were. So people in the convention wonder whose name's on that list. So what they do is they decide, since they don't know the people's names on the list, that they need to say that Robespierre is on the list. And they need to get rid of him. Otherwise, it's going to be their head on a platter. So he's sentenced to death by guillotine and is killed. In 1798, 4 years later, a new government is established in France. It will be comprised of 2 legislative houses and a directory, which is the executive body consisting of 5 people. So France at this point has gone through several different governments. They've gone from a monarchy to the 3 estates meeting as one in the National Assembly, to the Legislative Assembly, to the National Convention, and now the Directory.